Everybody, welcome back to Omens. I'm your host Ryan, AM Air Pronouns, and this is episode 24, The Chariot. Real quick, I'm going to apologize for the birds. They are lively right now, which means they refuse to go in their cage. And they're noisy. And I've got stuff to do today, so I kind of got to record. So I'll just do my best to make sure they stay semi-quiet-ish. At the very least, I'll pause if anybody decides to start screeching to hush them. Mostly by getting my hand close to them and then they fly off. But yeah, so sorry about the birds, but like I said, I got shit to do today, so oh well, we're stuck with it. Which, honestly appropriate that I'm plowing through this obstacle because today we're talking about the Chariot, which is all about plowing through obstacles, so I noticed there's a bit of a theme going on here with some of my my videos when I do the cards. Something that kind of pertains to the specific card will come up during the video. It's often something subtle and small, but and sometimes it's something that doesn't even necessarily make it onto the video. It's just something I noticed during my day-to-day life that happens. So, but anyway, let's dive into the Chariot. So first up, our first card we have is from the Black Cat Tarot, and we've got here a couple of, well, kind of dog slash horse slash lion like animals, all hooked up like horses to a small chariot that's, and one's black and white, and they're racing, like literally racing down a path, like legs fully splayed out, racing down a path, carrying that chariot, and the black cat, which is supposed to, which I'm assuming is the rider, is, instead of being in the chariot, clinging to the white steed's neck instead, like, faster, faster, let's move. Just racing down a path, a dirt road. Alright, so, and this is the card we're going to use that I'll have up while we're talking about the 7, the number of the chariot. So the chariot is the 7th card in the major arcana. Well, it's card number 7. It's kind of sort of the 8th card if you start as the Fool as the first one, but the Fool is kind of its own thing, so its card number 7 is the Chariot. It is also in the Fool's Journey. If you lay out the major arcana in 3 rows of 7, it is the end of the first road, which my friend Mashad speaks as representing the physical, mundane part of the soul's of the person's life. So cards 1 through 7 are your basic life stuff, and then past your next row would be when you're coming into spiritual awareness, and the 3rd row, I forget what that is, but it's an even higher level type deal. And it's like this, but the first row is the first level, which is your mundane. Everybody goes through this. Very few people go past. I'm now pulling from Lindsay, something I've heard from Lindsay Mack, and when she's describing the Fool's Journey, is very few people tend to go past the 7, because the 7, the Chariot, that's where we've hit our peak, and mundane wise. And I mean, everybody will go through the full journey of the major arcana in their life, but very few people like going past the 7, and they'll usually get pushed through circumstances in life to go on 8 through 22, or 21, sorry. Garth is really bitchy today. It's him that's mostly screeching. Sorry. Again. But yeah, so very few people tend to want to go past the Chariot, and we'll see why as we continue along, but pulling back a little bit, the number 7, if you listen to last month's episode on the 7 of Wands, I go into the 7 pretty well, so I'm not going to cover it overly much. I mean, each of these I'm going to cover as much in depth as I can and hopefully find new stuff, because, you know, I'm going to run into each of these numbers at least 5 times. But 7 it's a spiritual number. And it is actually the spiritual number of practical philosophical experience. It's the teaching slash learning number. It's the number of knowledge, of spiritual enlightenment, of sacrifice to learn things. It in a birth chart, in somebody's birth chart, and actually it's interesting. I've kept calling this Pythagorean numerology because of basically the one numerology book I've been using explicitly states it's Pythagorean numerology. So I was like, you know what, for the heck of it, let's start pulling out my Chinese numerology book I also have. I haven't even read yet, go figure. I was like, let me kind of dig into that a little bit, see what it has to say, and pretty much the exact same stuff that the other numerology book has. So I'm like, this is supposed to be specifically Chinese, and this is supposed to be specifically Pythagorean. And yet they match quite well, mostly in the chart itself as being a square and the different arrows through the chart. That's a whole other thing. But they're damn near the same thing. All the arrows have the same name, as far as I can tell, just kind of glancing through. I'm like, so, okay, we're just going to call it numerology from now on. But, in general, 7 spiritual numbers, number of sacrifice to learn. Basically, in order to gain knowledge, we have to give something up. And not always when it comes to book, like a simple example, book learning. If we want to go learn something for books, we got to buy the books first, or go to the library. Which means we've got to take the time to actually go to the library, find the books, or request the books, or whatever, to get them. So it's a sacrifice of time. And in the case of actually buying the books, it's a sacrifice of money. In the case of going to school, it's, again, another sacrifice of money. It is a knowledge gain. It's, again, that's a very simple aspect of it. The more accurate aspect that the 7 itself points to is larger sacrifice, going through actual learning curves in life, such as, well, for an example that's kind of been coming up in some of the people surrounding me with their relationships and stuff, it's in order, well, okay, so I'll just kind of give a quick synopsis. Is I've got a couple people, 2 or 3, I can't remember the exact number, that are currently going through some different stages of abusive to semi-abusive relationships. One of them is kind of borderline, has some abusive tactics, but that may come from a previous abusive relationship one of the partners was involved in, who they haven't quite left that relationship in more ways than one. That's a whole gossip thing. But it's that experience. And then another one who they just got out of a very manipulative, gaslighting relationship. So in going through these, the people going through these relationships and having that, well, we can see first off in the one who just got out of the manipulative relationship. In their case, it is, they've learned, okay, this is what a manipulative person looks like. This is gaslighting. This is, I've sacrificed innocence. I actually did a card read for them, and one of the cards that came up was innocence, and it was innocence cross sacrifice. So basically, innocence sacrificed to grow. That's the 7 in a nutshell. It is the sacrifice of one way of being to grow into the next stage of being. The innocent sacrifice to grow into the next stage of being. And in the other relationship where it's kind of a cycle going through, it's a different kind of learning. It's most likely the person in the middle of the 2 relationships is, they're not, their sacrifice is and knowledge gain might come in a later iteration, because they're having to, basically, they've gone through shit, and now they're putting someone else through shit. And whether or not they learn enough to save their more current relationship is yet to be determined. It's in the works, but that's kind of how I see it. It's like this person in the middle could learn from this past relationship in order to grow and save the new relationship, or they could refuse to learn and therefore end up sacrificing both relationships. And, well, that's more of the 7 in a nutshell. It's this sacrifice, it's those hard-hitting lessons. It's those lessons that just, like, they make you want to scream. You're like, why am I going through this? Those screaming, crying relationships that are like, or lessons that you're like, I don't want to go through this shit, but it is very important for your growth as an incarnate being. Or, yeah, incarnate? I think it's incarnate. A corporeal being. As a spiritual being having a corporeal experience. However you want to... That's how I like to put it. It's like these lessons are important for growth as a spiritual being, because stagnation is no fun. At least I don't think it is. You might have a different opinion, but meh. That's cool, honestly. It's like... Though I'm assuming if you're watching this, or you've probably been doing, you probably agree, most likely. It's a bit of an echo chamber in this area, unless you're just randomly scrolling through videos and like, what the fuck is this about? Well, in which case, hi! But anyway, that's the 7 in a nutshell. It's, and in this card specifically, in the Chariot, we can see that kind of the sacrifice of that number has been this. The charioteer has climbed out of the chariot to ride the steed. It's like, they're like, this cat, they're just like, you know what? Fuck it. I want to know what it feels like to run, to speed. I don't want to sit back here safe in my chariot and guarded and whatnot, even though a chariot is not the safest vehicle. It's not, actually rather a very unsafe vehicle. Like, I want to experience more freedom. I want to learn something new. So they're most likely, just from the look, with one leg kicked back, this cat climbed onto the steed while the chariot was moving. Basically, while these beasts were galloping, this cat was like, I am going to try something very, very difficult for a very, very good reward. And it's basically the thrill, in this case, the thrill of just being able to say, I climbed down to this dangerously moving vehicle onto a dangerously moving creature, and I rode that son of a bitch. I know the guy. So yeah, the 7 denotes spirituality, intuition, and developing faith. And this is very much a development of faith. It's like, I have faith in myself to be able, that I can do this, that I can climb out of this racing chariot and onto a racing beast that's pulling it. Not get tangled in the harness, not fall off, not, yeah, basically those two, not harm myself. I can do this, and hey, they pretty much did it. I mean, they're still in the motion of doing it, but they're up there. So, that's the 7. Alright, the next part of the chariot is the alchemy. And I took this specifically, basically for these, I just do a quote from the Path of Alchemy book I have, and how tarot relates to the alchemist's journey. So for that, I'll describe the card after I read the quote. I have my vice versa tarot here. So in alchemy, the chariot represents the oven of the alchemist and its need to be consistently watched. Sorry. Got distracted. Birds all went in the cage. Alright. So, the chariot represents the oven of the alchemist, and its need to be constantly watched, directed, and controlled through the skillful operations of the head, heart, and hands. So, if you've been following along to the quotes, which I haven't, go figure. Sorry. Let me wrap these guys up a little bit. Probably should pause the video, but, you know. Alright. There. Shish. Alright, so I forgot where I was. The alchemy quotes. So, yes. Alright, so if we've been following along in the quotes, which I really should have brought this. The fool is the aspiring alchemist. The magus is the accomplished alchemist, or the magician. Sorry. The priestess is the secrets of nature are revealed to us. The empress is the invisible energies operating the material body and life of the alchemist. The emperor is the action phase. The first, okay, I've slowly been stewing in all this knowledge. I've been stewing in this knowledge. Now it's time to actually do stuff. The Hierophant is when we start learning, when somebody teaches us, or something, in this case a book, in my case, anyway. The Lovers is when we choose our path, which way are we going to go. And then the Chariot is when we start cooking, basically. Lovers is when we decide what we want to do. Chariot is when we start cooking. It's like it's time to put the stove on. When you're cooking, for example, a very common metaphor for alchemy is the kitchen, is cooking, baking, and whatnot. Because it's pretty much alchemy. You're taking a bunch of different substances and you're pushing them together. You're breaking them down. Wheat gets broken down to flour, etc., etc. You're breaking it down, and through the process of most often heating and sometimes cooling, you're creating a whole new thing. So and when you're working with heat, you gotta watch it. With ovens, with stoves, with fire pits, grills, whatever. You're using the heat as a way to transform a bunch of things into a different form of being. And my camera is being bitchy about the fact that I covered the birds up. So the card I have is for the Vice Versa Tarot. So this side of it, we have our charioteer, and this kind of standing up in the chariots. Chariot has red wheels. The charioteer has a red cape, a short cape, I should point out. And good grief. There we go. And we have it, and in this case, we have kind of the traditional imagery of two sphinxes are pulling the chariot. So, female-headed and breasted lions, basically. You can't see their tails, but I do have an episode that had the sphinx on it. I just don't remember which one. I think it was it was the Hierophant. The Hierophant video had a sphinx in the being, and I at least went through the Greek mythology of the sphinx, even though it was more specifically about the Egyptian one, but I digress. This chariot is not moving anywhere near as fast as the last one. These sphinxes are plodding along very slowly and stately. Well, not slowly, but stately. The charioteer is holding up a rod of mercury in his hand, or her hand. I think it's a him. Stars overhead, they're just kind of plodding along very stately and controlled. And stately and controlled. It's slightly more noble. So just based off this energy, just based off this symbolism on this side, we have someone who is a master of control, who is in charge of his will, his driving force, of their movement. They're in charge. They've got their sphinxes, these wild creatures, going along, and even though this black one is kind of looking off to they're both the sphinxes are kind of looking off a little bit to the side, so you know that the beings, basically the forces pulling this chariot, are not fully, they don't direct themselves very well, so the charioteer is directing them, and then of course a little extra symbolism is the wheels of the chariot are red. Red represents passion. in all of its forms. Passion, fire to a degree, so that fire passion that I want to go for something, I want to do something, I want. These passion are the wheels, so passion drives the chariot. Passion is what carries the chariot forward, I should say. It's what carries the chariot forward, but here the breast of the chariot is brown, and brown in color magic is its groundedness, its stability, it's the earth, its rootedness, and it's even got a bit of a, and this will come into play a little bit later, it also has associations with animals, and that'll come into play a lot later in the video, but you'll see. So we've got, right off the bat, a shit ton of color magic, just in the color symbolism. And on the front of the chariot, there's a bit of a, kind of a wooden depiction of an eye. It's kind of hard to see in here. There we go. So we can think of that as, like, since it's a single eye, and it's not an eye of Ra, I'll point that out real fast, or Horus, we could probably associate with the third eye, with our intuition, and that's very important because, well, it'll come up in this next section anyway. So the chariot card is associated with Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, which has to do with intuition and insight, and the third eye, the psychic realm, and such. So we've got all that all that symbolism wrapped up in here first off. And again, a little bit more, Sphinxes are known for telling riddles. So insight, knowledge, and they're what is pulling this chariot forward. Now, when we get to that side of the chariot, the side behind, first off, I want to draw your attention here to where the charioteer is standing in the chariot. There's a cup there, or a chalice. In the tarot, chalices represent emotion, intuition, psychic realm, anything to do with water type deal, symbolically. So this charioteer he's holding up the rod of Mercury, which has to do with insight, logic, communication, speed. Mercury is the messenger god. And then, so he's holding that up. The communication and the speed is what's most important to the charioteer. And that is what is his, not quite a guiding rod, but definitely upheld in his hand. It's very important. And his emotion and intuition is not quite as important in this case, but it's still there. It's still in the chariot with him. So it's like, I lead with my mind and I make sure to bring my heart along. That's kind of what this is saying. It's like, I lead with my mind and my passion carries me forward. I lead with my mind, and which again, we've got the Sphinxes: mind, logic, intuition, logic, riddles, and knowledge. So I lead with my mind, my passion carries me, and I bring my heart along. My heart stays with me. That's kind of, in a nutshell, the symbology that's sitting right here. And then the path behind the chariot is falling apart. This cobblestone is slowly shrinking and revealing kind of a galaxy underneath, a galaxy symbolism. So the charioteer is riding forth into the night sky, probably the rising sun. And behind them, they leave space. They leave nothing behind but beauty where they've been, I guess. That one's a little bit more... I'm not 100% sold on the symbolism. Oh, a couple other aspects to this card is back here behind it, of course, we have a chain. You might not be able to really see it, but there's a chain. There's actually a few chains, like chains broken off on either side. You can't really see it here unless I get really close. And even then you can't really see it. There's kind of a chain there and there. So these are broken chains. It's like nothing holds me back. And then we have the rune Raido carved into a stone here, the Elder Futhark rune Raido, which actually has to do with riding, horses, movement, travel. It's like I break free of these chains, they don't hold me back, and all that is behind me fades into nothingness, fades into the ether that it was before, and I go forward. Again, my passion carries me forward. I lead with my mind, and I take my heart along. And that's kind of what this card is right here. That's pretty much what I'm getting a lot from the symbology of this card. Now, what does that have to do tie in specifically with the alchemy? Well, I mean, we have the Staff of Mercury. Mercury is, or Hermes, as he's known to the Greeks in Grecian mythology, is, if you've ever heard of Hermes Trismegistus, it's Hermes thrice greatest, or also aka Thoth, who is the god of magic. Hermes is not just a messenger god, but also the god of magic. He's also the trickster god, god of robbers and highway thieves, which, you know, he's a trickster, of course he is. But he's also the god of alchemy, which knowledge, intuition. And yes, I know that's a very loose tie-in, but you know, it's there. And most of these cards, all of them are very loose tie-ins. So, and the other part in the alchemy is this, again, it's a transitional phase. It's like this Chariot is moving forward, but especially from the back where you can see it's a transitional phase. Everything behind is fading into nothingness. Once we make something new, especially in alchemy, once we leave, think again, bread. If you're just simple bread. If you want to make a loaf of bread, you are never going to be able to separate it into its component parts again. It is never going to become flour, water, salt, yeast. Those are basically the main components of bread. It is never going to be those four components ever again. It is now bread. It will, all this past, it can't go backwards. There's no path to let behind to go back to. In the Chariot, in alchemy, once you go forward, there's no going back. You can't undo something. This is this kind of thing. In this particular instance, this is something you cannot undo. It's not undoable. You just have to keep going forward. You've made your mistakes, learned your lessons, or you haven't, but you've made your mistakes and you've gone through the shit, and you can't go back. You can't undo what you might regret. You can't undo what somebody else might regret. You just have to keep going forward. There's no going back. Same as within alchemy. There's just no going back. Alright. So that's only 2 components, and we're almost at 30 minutes. I'm doing great. Alright, next part, again, astrology. Not again. Wow. Next part is astrology. I have my Oracle of the Dragons for that, which is a 4-headed wyvern. Actually, it's not a wyvern. I think it's a worm. Lindworm. I totally should know what type of dragon this is. But basically, it's a legless dragon with wings. 4 heads, pulling along a small chariot. Looking, and then all the heads are looking every which way. And they've all got to decide where to go, basically. Alright, so in astrology, like I said a little bit ago, the Chariot is associated with the zodiac sign of Cancer. Cancer is the cardinal water sign, which means it begins a season. It's the first sign of a season. In its case, it begins the season of summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the southern hemisphere. So, get into that in a second. So it begins 2 seasons. Cancer is also ruled by the moon, like I said. And so the moon is intuition, psychism, emotions. It rules those. Well, more specifically, it rules those parts. It rules the water of us. And then the reason why I find cardinal water and, well, cardinal part, the beginning of the season of both summer and winter, is because Cancer is the sign of home, of nurturing, of family. Its symbol is the crab. Its constellation is the crab. Its glyph is supposed to represent crab arms in one over the other. Um, defense mechanism. Crab lives in its shell. Cancers are known for being very kind of defensive, and home buddies is kind of the stereotype, I suppose. And it's because that's what they are. This, and in astrology, Cancer is also associated with the 4th house of the natal chart, which is where astrologers look for, uh, things relating to your home, your family, how you nurture, or how you were nurtured, growing up, how you associate with family life and stuff. So the reason I find this so interesting for this card, the Chariot, is if you look, I don't have the Rider-Waite-Smith deck with me, but if you look at the RWS imagery and a few other cards, the Chariot it's a very well-dressed man in a chariot, which has a canopy over top, which is reminiscent of the Four of Wands canopy, in that it's got 4 poles with a canopy over top, which, again, we know the Four of Wands, and you can go back and listen to that episode, is about home and stability and groundedness and family, even if it's just kind of the beginnings of it. So the Chariot is kind of the small mobile home. However, and again, associated with crab. Crab basically carries its home on its back like a few other creatures do, but in this case, the crab's shell is an integral part of it. I mean, all other creatures that have their homes on their back and shells, that is an integral part. It's just with the crab, it's not quite as obvious looking. It's more integrated into this is fully a part of me. It's not, it looks more fully a part, I should say. It doesn't look like a separate shell. It's just looks like the crab. And so its home is right there. And the thing about the crab's shell is, unlike other creatures, it can't withdraw back into its shell. Its shell is its entire self, its entire being. It is half and half. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, I suppose. Is instead of it being semi-separate of, I withdraw into my shell, it's, I'm already in my shell, I just put up my defenses if something comes to attack me. I just put up my arms. And I scuttle sideways, and I'm always on the lookout for stuff, because crabs are. As far as I know, anyway. I don't know a lot about the psychology of crabs. Any type of crabs. Alright, so, and the thing with the Chariot is it's a small house built for war. That's my thing, is I saw this, basically in the book I was taking this from, it was like, this is the small home that you carry. I'm like, chariots are not very stable and not very safe. They were built for war, for short distances. They're not meant for long distance travel. They are not. They will rattle apart. They're meant for short distance travel, and they're meant to protect and guard and defend. It's like you had two people, at least two people riding a chariot. You had the charioteer, who was actually driving the thing, controlling the horses as they were racing around everywhere. And then you had the shield, or I think a spear person usually, someone with a spear that was sitting there stabbing their enemies. And it's like, there's your claws. And then, of course, the charioteer has to, oh shit, somebody's about to, has to defend. The charioteer has to defend. The spearman has to attack. So there's a lot of trust and guardedness between these two. The spearman is counting on the charioteer to look out for enemies, to avoid the enemies as much as avoid being attacked. And the charioteer is depending on the spearman to keep them safe, to keep them from being boarded, basically from behind. So it is very much a defensive area, but it's not long term. Not built for long term. I mean, you can, like in some of them, probably with the cards with the canopy, you probably could, and make them a little bit more homey, but still not long term. Still more of a war vehicle. In my eyes, anyway. So again, we've got water, emotional energy, cardinal, leadership. It's the beginning. Oh, that's right. I almost forgot. So the reason I find it being a cardinal sign, the beginning of both summer and winter, is, and there goes my door. Cancer being the sign of home. that makes sense for the winter season, because, you know, that's when everybody's bundling up and they want to stay for the long term. However, like I said, Cancer is a little bit more short term. So, and as we know, most of the zodiac astrology we know was kind of built from people living in the northern hemisphere. So being associated with the summer months, even though the constellation now actually does rise during the winter months for the northern hemisphere, so we still have that association, especially in our more modern age when we don't stay home quite as much. Even though winter is more of the hibernation series and season, in the modern age we don't really hibernate very much, but we want to stay home. We want to be comforted. We want to just stay home, relax, build up our defenses, and then go out again. Summer-wise, we want to keep going out, but we've got to remember to go home, to recharge, to fill up our energy again, to make sure that our home's actually doing good and whatnot. So it's the beginning of the season when we're most likely back and forth. The 2 seasons when we're most back and forth, especially in modern age. It's like, I want to go out, I want to do stuff, now I want to go home. I want to go out, I want to go home. I want to go out, I want to go home. It's like home becomes very important during both the winter and the summer season. It's very important. It's like, this is my defend myself from the world area, and it's like, okay, time to just put up my guard, just kind of hide for a little bit. Okay, I'm ready to go out and face the world again. It's like, okay, I'm worn out, gotta go back home, defend myself, just not do anything. Alright, I'm ready to face the world again. And now I'm running around in circles. So yeah. Anything to do with home life, family life, that's the astrology of Cancer, which is the astrology of the Chariot card. It's home life, but it's also, again, we're carrying the home with us. It's a very small home, but we're going out, going forward, going to do stuff, but we need that defense. We need that little piece of home with us. In this card, we kind of see that, because it's like we've got this chariot that's being pulled along. The dragon itself is the charioteer and the beast pulling, and the steed. So the dragon's pulling along its home with it, but it's very much up in a defensive posture. The wings are spread, the heads are all looking all over the place. It's like, I'm going forward, I'm gonna do this stuff, I'm gonna get through this shit, and I'm gonna, like, those who oppose me will be overrun, basically. It's like, I'm gonna climb over every obstacle, but as I need to, I'll jump back, I'll stop my chariot, jump back in there, curl up, go sleep. We have that entire thing going on here. Pretty short and simple ish, I suppose. Alright, next part of this is the Kabbalah. So the Chariot, and I have my Tarot of the Old Path here, and we've got a kingly looking man who, it's a little hard to tell, but he is wearing a silver breastplate. I realize it looks like bare chest, but it's just the arms that are bare, and the shoulders, and the neck. Yeah. He does have a breastplate. It's just a very silvery one that matches his skin tone. He's got his blue skirt, and his breastplate actually has a crab on it. So a bit of a nod to the sign of Cancer. He's got his red cloak, and he's carrying aloft in his hand. He's actually carrying aloft a green branch of, I don't know what type of plant that is. Looks like a small tree branch, so you know, growth, established growth. His cloak is red, so again, that passion, it's whipping up, it's very important. Blue in his, I'm just going to call it a skirt, because I don't know the proper name for it. Blue in his skirt, kind of a nod to the emotional intuition and psychism. And then the crab as a nod to Cancer, and his breastplate, because it is, and I'll hold this close, kind of silvery and with like gold glints. It's supposed to, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to represent the moon. It's basically the moon colors. And actually that gold glint is because of one of his horses, which is fire, so it's like the fire is reflecting off the silver breastplate. My bad. So the silver breastplate is a nod to the moon, the crab a nod to Cancer. We've got red for passion, and then his And even his chariot is actually kind of a silvery metal, so again, towards the moon. And then his horses are, well, he's got 4 of them. One's fire, it's all aflame. One is earth, it's green with little daisies and braided wheat for a mane. The next one is air, and it's worse sky, I think, because it's basically a dark blue. It looks like with stars all over it. It looks like the night sky. It confused the heck out of me. I thought it might have been water at first until I finally got a closer look at this 4th one, which is kind of a bluish white. It's actually water, and the only way you can tell that is because the end of its mane has little water droplets coming off of it. Now it's like, I think those last two probably could have been done slightly better, but meh. It's a gorgeous card, honestly. Anyway, so we've got this Chariot Master who is King of the Elements type deal, riding forward. And in Kabbalah, the Chariot is associated with the path. Is associated with the path between the Kabbalistic Tree of Life path, which is, I'm assuming its name is Cheth, which is, or it might be Keth. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The Hebrew letter Keth or Cheth. I think it's Cheth because the English equivalent was Ch. So I think it's Cheth. Which is the name for Path 18 on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. And that is the path between Binah and Gevurah, or Geburah, which is, Binah is understanding, and Gevurah, or Geburah, is severity. And they're the 3rd and 5th Sephiroth. Their image is a fence, so good fences make good neighbors. That's what I can think for that, is, again, a home. To protect your home, we put up a fence. And it's like, good fences make good neighbors, because nobody's encroaching on anybody's territory. And if we really want to, we can put up a bit of a screen so you can't really peek through. Or just randomly, like, what you doing over there? The numerical value is 8. So we have, again, an interesting sequence. Because if we take 18, break it down to its smallest number, because 18 isn't a big major numerology number. We've got a 7, 8, 9, like we usually do with Kabbalah. So the Chariot is card 7. The numerical value for the path is 8. And the path itself is 18, which breaks down to 9. So 7, 8, 9. And no, 7 did not eat 9. Or maybe he did. We don't know if he did or didn't. So we've got kind of that the 3 highest numbers in numerology's 1 through 9 cycle. So the 3 highest numbers, the 3 highest numbers. So 7, spirituality; 8, stability; 9, I forget what 9 is, but it's life, maybe? I don't know. Life, I forget. And the Sephiroth, the path is between, is, again, Binah and Gevurah, understanding and severity. So both of these Sephiroth are on the pillar of severity on the Tree of Life, which is the pillar associated with the feminine principle, actually. The receptive principle. So first off, Binah is actually associated with the supernal mother, the highest feminine archetype, basically, in Judaic mysticism. I'm assuming I might be slightly wrong. Sorry if I am. Shush you. So the supernal mother, who is both the giver of life and limitation. So it's associated with both receptivity and resistance. So severe on the pillar of severity, this is where we go, hold up, stop, let's be sure. Wait, is this right? Is this correct? Is this good? But it's also the feminine principle, which is the receptive principle. I receive. Not that I take, that's more the shadow side of it, is the take. The ability to receive, to go, oh, thank you for this. type deal or something. But again, it's receptivity and resistance. For example, the metaphor that was kind of put in there, and I know a little bit more about, and makes a lot of sense, is electrical wires. So in electricity, or in electrical stuff, and my only experience with this is one class in automotive electricity, so not going to say I'm like what's the word? A master on this subject. I only know the basics. For electricity to work, it's got to have the easiest path to go on. So in electrical wires, we most often use copper because it is the least resistant to electricity. Electricity can flow along copper wires very quickly, very smoothly. However, there is still some resistance because there's resistance through everything. Like, even through the air, if we watch a lightning strike, all that little zigzag stuff is it moving around the air resistance, finding the least resistant path to get down to its final destination. So the receptivity is its smooth line along this copper wire. The resistance, however, is the fact that depending on the thickness and the length, it increases. It gets harder to go along. If it's, sorry, no. Is it thick or thin? I forget. Depending on the thickness of the wire, one way or the other increases the resistance. I think it's the thicker increases more. No, that doesn't make sense. I think it's the thinness. Maybe the thinner it is, the higher the resistance. I can't remember now. I'll just set that aside. But let's focus on length, because I know the length, the longer it gets, the harder it gets to get from point A to point B. And just think about it, like, even us, the longer a distance we got to travel, the more worn out we're going to get. It's the same kind of thing. So, Bana is receptivity and resistance. It's like, I can do this stuff, but I got to remember my limitations. She gives life, the Supernal Mother gives life, but also is like, okay, can't just go on forever because then there's no point. It's like, you got limits. Got limits to take. You got to remember, if you're going to get anywhere, if you're going to grow in any way, you're going to have limits, obstacles to overcome. And so that's Bana. And then Gebura is severity. It's the middle of the pillar of severity. And it is associated with limitations again. And with judgment. Like, can I really, not the judgment in, like, you shouldn't do that. It's the judgment of, can I do this? Should I do this? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Quit screeching. Should I really actually eat that piece of food off the floor? The answer is no. What the fuck is wrong with you all? There's germs. There's no 5-second rule. Or 2-second rule. The germs are on there as soon as you're... Anyway. Pet peeve. Judgment in the, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? It's like, can I actually do this? Or should I not do this? Should I do this? Can I do this? Should I do this? And yeah, limitations and judgment. So it's also, in the slightly more broader sense, it's associated with not only as the great limiter, but also the restorer of balance of karma. So when karma specifically has to do with, okay, let me tally up at the end of my life all the stuff I did one way or another. So as to whatever side of balance there is at the end, I don't even have an idea at the moment. It's like, I did this many harmful things, I did this many helpful things. It's like, tally up, see which one's which, and it's like, if they're an even, great, I'm doing good. The world's still swinging on its pendulum from one side to another very nicely. Now, if I did more harmful things than helpful things, well, I've tilted the balance of my own soul kind of more towards harmful than helpful, so my karma is to go into the next life or the next few lives and try to up that helpful balance, be more helpful, so I can bring these up together. Now, on the other side is if I've caused way too much helpful, if I've swung the side up to the helpful side, like I went way up, it's like, okay, everything's tilting towards the helpful, which doesn't sound bad, but I'm very much simplifying it. There's more to it, but I'm really simplifying it. It's like, okay, pendulum's crooked. I gotta do restore some balance, bring in this next few lives to kind of bring up some of the harmful stuff, which might be in the form of being selfish. Just like, okay, I was constantly giving and martyring myself for other people. It's time to be a little more harmful to others by helping myself out a little bit more. It's like telling people to fuck off. I'm not gonna be your not gonna be your shoulder to cry on all the time because you can't get your life in gear. I got my own shit to take care of. But yeah, this one's going semi-long. Alright, so, and in this card, so how this applies to this card in the Terror of the Old Path, receptivity and limitations. So we've got, again, the Moon, Cancer, Reception. This charioteer can... He's got a lot. I mean, he looks like he's a freaking king, or a knight at the very least. I'm pretty sure it's king because he's got a crown on his head with a star on it. So he is the king, he is the master, and he receives his due, his right. However, his limitations is like, he's got all these horses right in front of him. That's his limitation. That's his block. The way these are set, that's a block. It's like, there's a limit to how close you can get to someone, how close you can get to people. It's like, yes, you can receive gifts, but since you're in charge and you have to make decisions and judgments, probably shouldn't take so many gifts that it starts becoming more of a bribe. That's your limitation. I'm just gonna make that real quick because we gotta move on. Alright, so the Kabbalistic angel is Archangel Michael. So the archangels, if you will recall, the hierarchy are the second lowest hierarchy of angels. They're right above, angels are the lowest, and then archangels are right above them. So the second lowest tier in the hierarchy. Archangel just means chief angel, which basically means they're in charge of, each of the archangels is in charge of a group of angels, like, that has specific duties. Archangel Michael is in charge of the archangels. So his group of angels is the other chief angels. So basically, all the other archangels are managers, and he's or all the other archangels are supervisors, and he's the manager over top of them. Type deal. So Michael means he who is like God. His psalm is 91:10, and this is one of the extra Kabbalistic angels. Basically, he's not actually in the Kabbalistic angels, so he's an extra on an extra card in the tarot in this deck, I should say. So he doesn't have a specific soul guardian, moral guardian, physical guardian aspect because he's not. So again, he's a manager. But he is good to call on because he represents perseverance. So again, with the Chariot, with that moving forward, that striving forward, just keep going, persevere. He portends success in conflict. So it's like, again, overcoming, being able to break through the obstacles, success in conflict, and empowers you to overcome adversity. So pretty much a lot of the same stuff. Yeah. Didn't just drop that, or almost dropped it. Okay, so that's the Kabbalistic angel, is Archangel Michael. Pretty popular guy. Alright, so the being on the Fantasy World Tarot, or the Spirit of Halloween Tarot deck I have, is a centaur, which is interesting. So, obviously we have the horse aspect, and then of course so centaurs are half humans, half horses, with the torso, arms, and head of a man attached to basically the neck part of a horse, so they have the body and legs of a horse. So this one's a dude rearing up with his sword and shield, or scimitar and shield. No, that's not a scimitar. I'm not sure what kind of sword that is. It's a short curved sword with a round shield. I'm not a weapons expert. Not much armor on, just some straps and shoulder plates, or guards, or whatever the fuck they're called. And gloves. He's got gloves too. And his hair's up in a fantastic ponytail. Alright, so Centaur. Centaurs in Greek mythology kind of represent barbarian, because centaurs come from Grecian mythology. They represent barbarianism, lust, chaos, the bestial nature of the worst of humanity type deal. They represent the worst bestial. Really, Bobby, you gotta sit right there and chirp. They basically represent the worst bestial nature and barbaric nature of humanity is what their representation is. Don't you curse me out. Now, however, if the first thing you think of is that, wait, not all of them. What about Chiron? Get into that. And actually, it's very important for the chariot. In the symbology of this chariot. So first off, the mythology behind the origin of the centaurs. Bobby, stop it. They've got a few different origin myths. The main one that seems to be the most popular is so the father of centaurs. There's a few different ones. So the parents. So simplest one that I couldn't find that I didn't look for an explanation on was that they are the children of Apollo and the nymph Stilbe. Not sure how to pronounce it. That's kind of one off. The other possibilities for their origins, well, they're kind of semi-interconnected. So either they are the son of a human man named Centaurus, who decided to get it on with the Magnesian mares. So bestiality all around. So we got a guy and decided to fuck some mares, and ta-da, we have centaurs. So again, you can kind of see where that origin of lust and barbarianism comes in, because animals can't consent. Newsflash, animals can't consent. So, yay for horsey rape. Oh gods. So there's that one. The second possibility is, or the third possibility I should say at this point, is they're the offspring of the king Ixion, who, funnily enough, I only just listened to one of my podcasts on mythology, who happened to be going through a list of different Grecian punishments, and Ixion came up, so I know a little bit more about his story than I found on my researching this. King Ixion was basically invited to the gods, to Mount Olympus as a guest of the gods, and started lusting after Hera, Zeus's wife. Much as Zeus can fuck anybody he wants, apparently, that's a no-no if you try to go after his wife. Okay, fine, whatever. But Ixion wasn't really showing it. Zeus just kind of had an idea. So what Zeus did is he took a cloud, who actually has a name, Nephele, a cloud, disguised her as Hera, and Ixion fucked her. So, and that pissed Zeus off, and there was a punishment involved. I can't remember what it was. But basically, the third possibility is that they're the centaurs are the offspring of Ixion and Nephele. The fourth possibility is where the previous two stories kind of join together, is that Ixion and Nephele, their son was Centaurus, who was the father of the centaurs. Now, whether that is Centaurus was a centaur himself, or Centaurus was their son who fucked and then fucked the Magnesian mares and then had the centaurs, I don't know. But yeah, so basically, in all of these, except for the one with Apollo and the nymph, which I'd have to look that one up. I'm assuming it might run kind of along the same lines. It was basically it was basically rape. honestly. They're the offspring of some form of rape. Whether it was the king fucking a cloud because he wanted to fuck Hera, which, again, I doubt she would have consented to, because Hera is very, very monogamous in all the myths. Very, very monogamous. I don't know if that's true. I don't work with Hera as a goddess. So somebody else who works with her currently would probably have a better idea. But either way, Ixion either raped a cloud or Apollo and a nymph. I don't even know on that one, like I said. Or a guy fucked a bunch of horses. So you can kind of see where that barbaric, the worst of humanity, kind of plays into the centaurs. Now, of course, continuing on to Chiron. Chiron is one of three rather famous, or the three most famous centaurs that we know of. So Chiron, of course, overcame his bestial nature. So we have that centaur, or that chariot of overcoming any obstacles, of being able to strive forward and grow and become better. Chiron overcame his bestial nature. He became a great teacher. He is a teacher of the god of medicine, Asclepius. And he, of course, was a mentor to a lot of heroes, a teacher to a lot of heroes. Heracles, Achilles, Jason's son Medeus. He was a great teacher and very, very well learned. So Heracles or Hercules. I prefer Heracles. And Chiron is going to feature, so hold on to your horses. No pun intended, though I totally own it. Alright, the next one is Pholus. So Pholus actually hosted Heracles or Hercules during one of his trials of 12 labors. I think he went through like 2 12 labors things. Poor guy. He really got fucked over by Hera quite a few times, which kind of sucks because he was named after the glory of Hera, is what Heracles means. But fair enough, because Zeus cheated on her to have him, so... But Pholus basically hosted him during one of his 12 labors, and Pholus decided to pull out the good wine given to him by Dionysus, the god of wine, so fair enough. The smell of it attracted other centaurs who were like, they broke into the party crashers, they're like, we want some of that too, so everybody started drinking, they all drank wine. Centaurs on wine get really, really fucked up and barbaric. Fight broke out. They all decided they wanted to attack Heracles. Bad idea. Hercules killed all of them. However, in the fight, Pholus apparently dropped one of Hercules' poisoned arrows on his own foot. How the fuck you do that? I mean, he's drunk, so okay. And the poison arrow is poisoned with the blood of the Hydra, so, no cure. So Pholus dies, and then Chiron was apparently there and accidentally got shot by one of the arrows. So Chiron dies. Or, actually, no, he doesn't die. There's a long thing. I think in that one he dies, but also there's a whole nother myth with him continuing on afterwards because he's immortal. I don't know. Don't remember. But I'm not going to get into it because I'm already running way over time. So there was that. The third centaur, and the reason I brought this up, because even though it's not connected to the previous two, the third centaur was Nessos. And Nessos was actually the downfall of Heracles. So Nessos was a centaur who Hercules had just married, I think, another wife, or one of his, basically his last wife. He'd married her, they were a young couple. They came across the river, they really needed to cross, but it was kind of a rushing, raging river, so Nessos very gracefully, very graciously offered to carry them across one at a time. Well, in the middle, he's taking the wife across. In the middle of the river, he rapes her, and Hercules is pissed off, shoots him with one of his poisoned arrows, poisoned with the Hydra's blood. Nessos, as he's dying, tells Hercules' wife, he's like, come closer, he's like, skin me and keep the skin, or no, not the skin. Take some of my blood and keep it in a jar. And if ever Heracles, if ever his love seems to wane, you can give it to him, and it will reignite his passion. She a bit stupid. She does this. Thing with the blood is it was now poisoned with the Hydra poison, so very deadly. So years later, she thinks Hercules' attention is wandering, so she gives him the blood. He ends up dying. Or, no, does he throw... no, he gets really sick and is, like, almost dying. So she, in her grief and remorse for basically poisoning the fuck out of him, and he's basically going to die. I don't remember if he died from that. There's a thing if he threw himself into a funeral pyre after she, in her remorse, takes her own life. So Heracles, in his grief, throws himself on a funeral pyre because he's dying anyway. He's not going to live. Of course, because he's a demigod, and because he's so famous, he actually gets elevated to become one of the gods of Olympus. So, yeah. So, Nessos. That was important. Featuring through all of these is Hercules. Which is part of why I threw that in there, because threw the third one in there, because I found it fascinating that apparently the three most famous centaurs in Grecian mythology all have connections to Hercules. Don't know what that means, but it's fascinating. So we have the centaur, overcoming bestial nature, overcoming our own drawbacks, being able to conquer our obstacles, and yada yada yada. So with all that, obviously, as we get to the final card, the traditional keyword, key phrases type stuff. I have my Archeon Tarot, which is a lady in full glory, just standing up on a very small, like, basic chariot, like just metal and a couple of staves. It's like the very basic facsimile of a chariot. It's not even really a full one. Not quite sure if she's holding on to the two rearing steeds, or if she's just, like, got her arms outstretched and they're, like, rearing up, ready to go, and she's in command in full power, and behind her, behind the sun, there's a kind of motif of the sun with, of course, the constellations kind of layered over it. And then behind that we have a motif of, I believe that's Isis with her wings outstretched. I think Isis is the one that has her arms with the wings outstretched, kneeling down. So Isis, the great mother, the great queen of Egypt, or the queen mother goddess of Egypt. So got her, got the sun, rising light, power, will, determination, ego. Got the chariot, which is, again, the charioteer. She's naked. Her chariot is like bare bones, so a lot of naked, raw willpower type deal. These horses, a red and blue one, they're all fired up. They're raring to go, and she is in full control of them. So upright, able to strive forward through willpower, magnetic personalities. This can be people who have that I'm going to keep going personality, and it's they just go forward. They're like, but they're entrepreneurs in charge of their own stuff. Just going forward, as an action, it's, again, striving forward through obstacles, persevering, overcoming. Yeah. Personality, archetype, people-wise, same kind of deal. People that just go forward. It's like they see an obstacle, they're like, let's do it. Inverted or reverse, of course, it's passionate chaos. There's no direction, no control, no concern for other people. It's like, I might end up accidentally running over somebody and they get tangled up in the wheels, but fuck it, I don't care, I just want to keep going. It's like, they're just going. They got nowhere to go, nowhere to be, nowhere to go, no specific place they want to go, but they're just causing chaos and just running over other people, like, meh, whatever. So people-wise, it's the assholes that just cut you off in traffic and don't give a shit, and they're just running on like, screw you, I'm the most important person. I don't really have anywhere to actually be, but you know what, I'm the most important, so I gotta be in front. Situation-wise, there's all this energy and there's all this stuff to do, but it's chaotic. There's no there's no specific direction. In fact, situation-wise, I'd say it's like obstacles everywhere and no real willpower to actually get over them. It's like, I'm gonna kind of tap at this wall and go off over there and tap at that wall, and oh god, everything sucks. Situation-wise, it's like you got blocks everywhere, and it's like it's all chaotic, and you can't actually get through anywhere. So that's the inverted. And yeah, like I said, this has gone over some kind of speed talking through the end, but I think we've mostly gotten the gist of this. Got a pretty good idea of what all of it is about and such, and so I think that's pretty good. Yeah, so that's been the Chariot. Next week's first Sunday, so we got the week off, and then I'll see you for April. Yeah, like, follow, comment here on YouTube, subscribe, hit the little bell to get notifications when I post a new video. Leave me comments. Let me know if you like it, you don't like it. Got interesting, different takes on it. Be fun to know. You got longer discussions you want to get into, you can email me at bagsandomens@gmail.com, or if you want to hit me up for a reading, do that too. Email me. Come find me on Facebook. Bags and Omens on Facebook. I post my daily card draw from Intuitive Tarot Read on there. Yeah, and if you if you're feeling generous, go find me on Patreon. I got all the links for these below, I should say. Find me on Patreon at patreon.com/bagsandomens, and don't throw a little money my way if you feel like it. I'd appreciate it. Working to get better lighting and speakers around here. And pray for the library to open up soon, because then we don't have to have a background opera. Or whatever the hell you actually want to call it. I love my birds. I swear I do. Alright. So, hope y'all have a good rest of your whatever. I will talk to you all in 2 weeks. Okay, bye.